TeamFight Tactics has become one of my favorite games that I've ever played for many, many reasons. It's a super in-depth auto-battler strategy game that really, really rewards you for learning the game, and it feels great when you do learn the game and when you play well. Now, since there is so much going on with it, and it is such a complex game, it can be super daunting to get into, but that's where I come in. So today, I'll be giving you my master class on TeamFight Tactics. So as a general overview, what exactly is TeamFight Tactics? So TeamFight Tactics is what's called an auto-battler game, and what that means is the combat itself takes place automatically, so you don't control individual units. You take care of everything else that happens, from the economy, to the purchasing of the units, to setting up your items, to everything else that goes on. You are the commander of the battlefield, essentially. So basically how it works is you buy the units or champions, they're all called champions, from the shop, and you use those champions to fight your opponent's champions. You're making use of different champion synergies to build a team that will overpower your foes alongside powerful items that you get and create. You place your champions on the board wherever you want on the grid, your opponent does the same thing, and then once the round starts, combat happens. So while there is a bit of RNG in the fights themselves because the units kind of do what they want, you have full control over where you place the units and the positioning, which does kind of matter a lot. Rounds carry on. Everyone starts with 100 health points, and at the end of each round, the losing player takes damage equal to the amount of units that are left on their opponent's field until there's only one person alive, and that person is the first place winner. Something unique about this game, though, is if you're ranking up on the ladder itself, trying to rank, anything first through fourth place is technically considered a win. While you'll get more points for placing first over second, third, or fourth, it is still quote-unquote a win if you place the top 4. So just remember, you're essentially trying to at least place top 4 when you're playing, but first place is obviously what you want to get. So let's talk about the champions themselves. So champions have a money value, a gold value if you will, between 1 and 5 gold depending on their rarity. Generally, 1 gold champions are going to be a little less powerful than 2 gold, and so on until you get to the big hitters, the 5 gold champions. There's not many of them, but they can be game-altering champions. So at the start of each round, you're offered 5 champions in what's called the shop, which is on the very bottom of your screen, and those are the ones that you can purchase from. The first set of champions is offered to you from the game. If you want to refresh that shop because you don't like your offerings, you can spend 2 gold to refresh the shop. The gold value of each champion you're looking to buy is shown at the bottom there, and to purchase it, you just simply click on the champion and you will buy it. If you don't like a champion you have, you can sell it back to the shop just by dragging it to the bottom into the shop, and you'll be refunded the gold that you spent on it. The percentage chance you have to find a specific rarity of a champion is displayed in the shop as well, and each level that you have in the game increases the chance to find higher rarity units, and then also decreases the chance that you have to find lower rarity units. So for instance, if you're level 6, you can see you have a 35% chance to find a 1 gold champion, 35% chance to find a 2 gold champion, 25% chance to find a 3 gold champion, 5% chance to find a 4 gold champion, and a 0% chance to find a 5 gold champion. Whereas here at level 8, there's only a 15% chance for 1 gold, 25% chance for 2 gold, 35% for 3 gold, 20% for 4 gold, and here you have a 5% chance for a 5 gold champion. So each champion has traits that are called classes and origins. I'm just going to keep it easy and call them traits. Most champions have 2 traits, although there are some special ones that have 3, because there has to be an exception to every rule in this game. If you look here on the left, you'll see all of the synergies that you currently have. If they're grayed out, it means one of the champions that's out on the battlefield you have counts as one of those traits, but it's not an active trait. For a trait to become active, you have to fulfill the minimum requirements of that trait. So if you look here, assassins need at least 2 assassins for the assassin bonus to happen. Brawlers need at least 2 brawlers for it to happen. But if we look at something like fortune, you need to have 3 fortune units for it to become active. If you hover over one of these traits, it'll show you what they do. So you can see that brawlers get more bonus health and attack damage, while assassins get bonus critical strike damage, and so on and so on. They all get different things. Some traits will affect your entire board. Other traits will only affect those that have the trait itself. Generally, you're wanting to build strong synergies out of these traits, as that's where all your power comes from, and being able to decide what traits you want to go for, what kind of build, quote-unquote, synergies you have, that's a lot of the core concepts of the game itself. If you look at these champions, each one has a health bar and a mana bar. How the mana bar works is when they auto attack or they take damage, they gain mana, and when their mana bar is full, they will cast their spell. When you look at a champion, you can see what the spell does. You can also see all their stats, and you'll notice that some champions have really powerful spells that take a lot of mana to cast, and then others have lower mana spells that are less splashy, but they cast more often. Some champions don't care about mana at all. There are a few that don't even have a mana bar, and those champions generally are making use from their auto attacks or have special abilities. But for the most part, most champions make use of mana. The other thing you'll notice is that if you buy 3 copies of a champion, they'll turn into a 2-star version of that champion. What this means is that spell gets more powerful, it gets more stats, and it just becomes more powerful of a unit. If you get 3 of these 2-star versions, they'll combine into their ultimate form of the 3-star champion, and these ones are considerably more powerful, do really cool things, very strong, and become monsters on the battlefield. Every set of Teamfight Tactics has its own little quote-unquote gimmick that's going on. If you are watching this during set 4, which is the current one as of this date, the current thing that we have in the current mechanic is called chosen units. So what you can see down here is if you have a chosen unit and you buy it, the chosen unit will have one of its traits that count for double of that chosen trait. So if you see this Tom Kinch, it's a chosen brawler, which means if it's out on the battlefield, it'll count for 2 brawlers. So it's like 2 units in one, kind of. It also counts as an automatic 2-star version, so it's as powerful as 3 1-stars of that unit. Chosens are super powerful. A lot of times your entire comp can revolve around a chosen unit, but you can only have 1 chosen at a time. So if you buy a chosen, no more will be offered to you in the shop. So if you want to see other chosens or you don't like the one you have, or it's fallen off, like if you got an early chosen that's no longer good late game, if you sell that chosen, then you'll start seeing more chosens in the shop. And if you look down here, that little pink chain looking symbol, if that's lit up, that means you'll be offered chosens as the shop cycles champions. All right, so now let's talk about leveling up. So if you look at the left of your shop, you'll see that there's a level that represents your level in the game. Each level represents how many units you can have at the field at any given time. So if you're a level 4, you can have 4 units out. If you're a level 5, you can have 5 units out, etc., etc. As I said before, it also increases your chance to find higher rarity champions. At the end of each round, whether you win or lose, you'll get 2 experience points that count towards your total level, and this can be represented. If you look at it, it'll say you have some number out of X number total that you need to get to the next level. So here at level 4, if I want to get to level 5, I need 10 experience points, and you can see that I have 2 out of 10 for this one. If you want to level up faster, you can spend your gold at a rate of 4 gold for 4 experience if you want to level up even quicker. Managing your income, your gold, managing how much you want to use that to refresh the shop, buy champions, and level up is a lot of where the strategy in this game comes as well. So on that subject, let's talk about gold and economy. So this is a very, very important one, and this is where a lot of newer players struggle, where it seems really difficult, but you'll figure it out as you play. This is also where a lot of early mistakes happen, and if you can manage this, just being able to manage your economy, you'll win a lot more games. Money, just like in life, is one of the most important things in this game. So after the rounds are over, at the start of every round, you gain gold based on your passive income. You can always hover over the money that you have here to kind of see where all your money's coming from. And that's an easy way to look at it rather than trying to remember all the different ways you can make money. Important things to note though, if you win a round, you get 1 extra gold. If you lose a round, you don't get that extra 1 gold. One of the most important things, though, is you generate an extra passive interest at the end of every round for every 10 gold that you have saved up. So if you have 30 gold saved up at the end, you'll gain 3 extra gold. If you have 40 gold saved up, you'll gain 4 extra gold, up to a cap of 5 extra gold for 50 gold saved up. So a good way to think is if you keep at least 50 gold in your bank at all times, you'll just generate an extra 5 gold at the end of every round, which is a good way to just make sure you never tank your economy if you can afford it. Sometimes, obviously, that won't happen because you need to buy champions, or if you're falling behind, you're losing too much, you may need to roll more to find some upgrades. But if you're in a good spot, you're not losing, and you're feeling comfortable, you can always just save that money when you can, and it will pay itself out. Now you'll also gain extra gold if you're on a win streak or if you're on a loss streak. So if you hover here, if you have a win streak or loss streak, it's the same. It'll show you that if you're on a 2 to 3 win streak, you'll gain 1 extra gold. If you're on a 4 win streak, you'll gain 2 extra gold. And if you're on a 5+, you'll gain 3 extra gold. So that's why it's really important to try and win streak when you can and not lose. Not only will you take less damage and you'll survive longer, being able to have extra health points is a resource as well, but you'll also make more money. But also, if you're on a lose streak, you'll also gain this extra gold as well. So if you're on a 5 lose streak, for instance, you'll still gain that extra passive gold. So sometimes if you are just trying to make money, sometimes it is better to lose, but not by a whole lot if you want to maintain that win streak, and then, be able to use that extra money you've earned to be able to buy more champions all in one burst and come back for a dramatic flourish at the end. You can also, if you look at the board here over at the left side, there's a little indication of how much gold you have saved up. You can see this on your opponent's side as well. So when you're looking around, you can kind of see how much money they have in the bank. So sometimes you'll see you got beat by an opponent. They're like a whole level ahead of you, but they have no money in the bank. You can kind of use that as a gauge of power to see, okay, I have at least 50 money saved in the bank. They have none. So they might have beaten me here, but going forward in the game, I'm going to be accruing a lot more extra passive gold. So that might show you that you're actually more ahead than you think. Every board's a little different on how they show this, but on the left side, there's going to be like 5 little doodads that'll show you as they're illuminated how much money you have in increments of up to 50 gold. So as the game progresses, they go through what are called rounds. So rounds are broken up into a small sub-rounds in between full rounds that you can see at the top of the screen. So you can see there's always 3 battle rounds where you fight an opponent. Then in the middle, there's a carousel round. Then you have 2 more rounds where you fight opponents, and then at the end you'll have a PvE round. And what these PvE rounds are is they allow you to fight against AI opponents in order to earn random items and gold. You can't determine what these give you, so that's some of the randomness, but it's also some of the skill that comes in. In the carousel rounds, you get to pick your items, whereas in these PvE rounds, you don't. So being able to kind of determine what items you need to put together is important, and we'll go over items here in a minute. As the game goes on, you and your opponents get stronger and stronger, and you'll end up doing more damage to each other just based on how many units are on the field, and you'll notice you'll take more damage as the game goes later than in the earlier rounds. So let's talk about these carousel rounds a little bit while we're here. So basically how it works is in the carousel, everyone's gonna have a chance to grab a champion that has an item on it. This is the very first round of the game that starts the game as well, and in the middle of every single round also. Generally, the main rule of thumb is that you're looking for items on the champions, as items are very, very, very important in this game. And not usually are you trying to pick the champions themselves. Of course, there's an exception to this, as there is with every rule. Sometimes it's okay to find the perfect champion if it's going to be one that'll like 3-star your main carry, or if it's late game and you need a specific champion you see to complete your comp, like if you're trying to get an extra mage bonus and you needed an Aurelian Soul, something like that. But usually you are trying to pick the items themselves, as items don't come along as much as champions. You can always buy more champions, but it is limited in how many items you can have in the game. The other thing to know in this carousel round is that whoever's in first place gets the last pick of items, and whoever's in last place gets the first pick of items. This is another way that it balances out the game, because if you're really far behind, you get the advantage of being able to pick an item first. Sometimes it's okay to be losing if you need a very, very specific item, like if you needed a rod to go with your sword because you need that for your carry. It may be okay to kind of lose on purpose in order to specifically get an earlier pick for the item. It is a little riskier as you're losing hit points, but it can totally pay off. And there are certain comps that you'll find as you play more that really, really require very specific items. So if you are trying to make that work, then sometimes that is something you can think about in these carousel rounds. But if you're unsure, go for an item over the champion. Items are more important. So since we're on the subject, let's talk about items. So as I said, items are very, very important in Teamfight Tactics, and they're one thing that really set this apart from other auto battlers, and it's a main mechanic of the game. So items are broken down into the item components themselves and fully built items. And what these are is if you combine any 2 of the item components, they'll always turn into one completed item. The completed items themselves have very powerful effects depending on what they are, and certain champions will want different types of items. The main core item components are going to be your sword, your bow, your rod, your tier, your vest, your cloak, your belt, and your gloves. Those are the main item components that you can use to build into other things. There are a lot of combinations, as you can see, of combining 2 different items, and it's hard to remember them all, but what makes it easy is if you click on one of the items themselves, it'll show you what these items combine into. So this is important when you're going through your carousel rounds, especially when you see, like, I have a Negatron cloak left. What are some items that I could combine this into? So you can see maybe you want to get a tier so that you can make a chalice, but you'll learn these as you play. It's just something you have to kind of memorize, but as you do learn these things and memorize them, you will get better at the game. You always have that helper in the game, though. You can just click on the item to kind of see what they combine into. Combining items is super easy. There's a couple ways you can do it. You have to combine the 2 parts of an item onto a champion. So you can either do this by putting them on the champion you want if you have both the pieces, or you can just combine them on a champion that you want to sell, put them together on that champion, sell the champion itself, and that'll pop off into your inventory, so then you can put it on any champion you want. You can't take items off a champion once they're on the champion without selling it. So just remember that when you're putting items onto a champion, it's permanent. And the only way to get them off that champion is to sell the champion itself. So be very careful. If you do have a specific champion you're wanting to build towards and you don't want to have to sell that champion, be careful with the items you put on them. Knowing what items are good on each champion is another core part of the game as well, and is vital to doing well in Teamfight Tactics. For instance, if you have a mage that wants to cast their spell more often, you might want to put more mana items on them so that they gain more mana faster. If you have a champion that greatly benefits from attack speed, you might want to get more bow items, as they'll get more attack speed with those. Or if you're trying to get really beefy units that need to just stay alive, things like chain vest or belt, etc. may be what you're kind of looking for. Items are so important in this game that sometimes if you have quote-unquote perfect items for a specific champion early on, you might want to build an entire comp around those items going on that champion later in order to win the game. There are some champions that really do need specific items to really work well. For instance, right now, Zed can become an absolute monster if you're able to get a rapid fire cannon on him, whereas he's just decent without it. If you are looking for specific items that go on specific champions, a couple good resources are Mobilytics, and there's also a really good phone app called Tactor. I'm not sponsored by either of them, but they're really good in showing you what champions can do well with what items, and if you have a champion you're trying to build, what items go with them. I recommend using this early, often. It will help you out, especially as you are new to the game. You won't always know what items are good on each champion, as they're like ideal preferred items. So it's a good thing to kind of check out as you're playing, keep open in the background, and be able to build around like that as well. Now, other than these core items, there's also a few unique items that are in the game. The 2 that you'll see a lot are the Spatula, which is the yellow guy, and Nico's Help. So what Spatula does is if you combine Spatula with one of the core items, it'll make a unique item that'll add a trait to another champion. So for instance, if you put a spatula with a sword, you'll make a Sword of the Divine, which you can put on a champion to add the divine trait to them. This is obviously powerful, as you can add extra traits to champions that aren't supposed to have them. It can help you build more traits. If you were like one off and you need another assassin, you could put another assassin out. And it's very strong, but spatulas are very, very rare and don't drop that often. So you can't usually build an entire comp, especially at the start, kind of hoping that you'll get one of these items, because you won't always see a spatula. You might see one every few games. They're pretty rare, but they're pretty strong. Now, in the even more rare case, if you get 2 spatulas, you can combine these into what's called a Force of Nature, which allows you to kind of cheat the game a little bit and put 1 extra champion on the battlefield past your level. So if you're level 6 with a Force of Nature, you can have 7 champions out, which you can obviously tell is very powerful. Nico's Help is the other unique item. What this does is if you get one, you can put it on a champion that you have on the bench or in the field, and this will give you 1 extra 1-star of that champion. There's a couple ways you can use this. So you can use this for an early game power spike, especially if you are losing really early on and you have like 2 of an Olaf, for instance, and you just need that 3rd one but can't find it. You can put the Nico's Help on it to get a 2-star Olaf. A lot of times where this is really powerful, though, is being able to get a powerful 3-cost unit later in the game, where if you have like 8 copies of Sivir and you can't find another Sivir, this could be your 9th, or getting those really hard to find 5 gold champions, being able to get the 3rd copy of one with a Nico's is really, really powerful as well. But just like the spatulas, Nico's don't come very often. They are pretty rare, so you can't always count on them happening. Right now, there are some other unique items that are happening in the 4.5 version of the game. Those are lantern items, and I'm not going to go over those. They're just different things, and when they show up in the game, you'll see them, but those are all subject to change, and the devs can change those anytime. So that's not a core concept of the game itself, so I'm going to skip over that for now. So those are all the main core concepts of the game, how the game works, and all the basics. There's some other important things to think about when you're playing the game, and I think one of the best pieces of advice that I've ever been given, and one that I'm going to give you too as well, is always play the game and always build your strategy with an end goal build in mind. This means as you're playing around, have kind of like your end goal somewhat situated, at least by I'd say mid-game at the latest. Having kind of an end goal in mind as you play the game will really, really help you flesh out your champions. And it's something you'll learn as you play more, what kind of the good synergies that pair well together are. I'm not going to go into specific ones because those change all the time based on the meta, but you'll learn kind of what goes really well with Spirit, for instance, or what really goes with Mystics, for instance. But just knowing you want to go those end game builds and kind of working the entire game around that is something that's very important. And if you can kind of think that way, will cause you to win more games in general. Another thing to think about is your good positioning. And positioning is very important in the game. It's something that I don't have like a specific guide on always best positionings, because again, it does kind of change based on the champions themselves. Certain champions and certain synergies want to be positioned differently. You'll learn that as you go along, but if you and an opponent are, going head to head and they're always beating you, maybe think about where your champions are positioned. A good, just basic general overview is you probably want to have your front line or your tanky dudes in the front, so that when the enemies are walking towards those champions, they'll battle with those big beefy dudes, so that your more squishier champions like your sharpshooters, your mages, things like that are in the back being protected, so that they can fire off their high damage abilities, because they'll die a lot quicker once they do start getting attacked. So just thinking about having a good front line, having a good back line is kind of a good way to think, especially when you're starting out. There are some cases where you don't need a front line or you don't need a back line, but just keep that cognizant in mind, how you want to position your champions. Another thing to keep in mind as you're playing is knowing who your carry is going to be and what kind of items they need to be. So your carry, what that means is your core champion or set of champions that you're kind of hedging on to win the game. So there are a lot of champions that make a really good carry. So finding those out and knowing what some of the more powerful champions are and kind of how you want to build your team around that is really important. So like for instance, at this exact moment in the game, like Kindred could be a really powerful carry. So thinking, okay, I'm going to build around Kindred. What items do I want on Kindred? Where do I need to position her to keep her safe? And things like that is important. Making sure back to positioning around a way to keep your carry safe is very important as well. Another good thing to keep in mind is scouting what your opponents are doing. So you can always see your opponent's health on the side, and if you click on them, you'll be taken to their board so you can see what they're playing. Being able to play synergies that your opponents aren't playing or that counter your opponents is some big brain thinking. But there's also a limited amount of each specific champion that's available to everyone in the pool. There is a shared pool of champions in the game, and there's only a certain amount of champions in that pool. So if someone else is trying to go Olaf carry as well, and you're trying to go Olaf carry, but they have all the Olafs, that might be why you're not finding the Olafs that you need. If everyone in the lobby is all going sharpshooters, you can be sure that it's going to be a lot harder for you to find the sharpshooters if you're also trying to do that. So maybe you want to pick something different, like Vanguards and Mystics, because everyone else is taking all the sharpshooters. So scouting around early and often is important, especially knowing just what kind of things your opponents are playing. Being able to scout around will help you with your positioning as well. If you see they've clumped all of their important units in one area, being able to put your units to where they'll kill those faster is a really good thing to do as well. So scouting is very, very important. So another tip is if you're trying to find a specific champion of a specific rarity, buying out similar champions of that rarity will increase your odds of finding the champion you want of that given rarity as you're rolling through the shop. So for instance, if you're trying to find Zed, he's a 2 gold champion, and you're rolling with a lot of money in the shop trying to find those Zeds, buying other 2 gold champions will increase the odds of you finding the Zeds as you're going through. So keep that in mind if you are trying to find one specific champion, especially if you need to get a 2-cost version or a 3-cost version. and you have the money to do so, buy the other champions of that same rarity. You can always sell them back for the same money, so it's not hurting you, but it is increasing your odds of finding the champions that you do need. And last, my tip for winning early on is just play your best board. While you want to have an in-game build in mind for the late game, just playing your best units early on will help you win. Early on, everyone's kind of weak, so if you have a lot of 2-star champions but they're not super synergistic, you might be able to win more than just having a few 1-cost sharpshooters. So just play what you have strongest early on. Being able to maximize your amount of health that you save is good, because later on that health you can use as a resource. You don't want to take a lot of damage if you don't have to. Now, like I said before, sometimes there are those risky builds where you want to lose a lot early on, but that's becoming less and less beneficial as the game changes. It used to be better on because you took far less damage early on in the game, but now you take quite a bit of damage. So it is a risky strategy trying to lose. If you are new, I usually recommend not doing that. Try to play your best board that you have, win streak early on, get that extra money, and use your economy to your advantage. There is a lot more to this game even still. Those are just the very basics of the game. It's not even talking about any specific comps or anything, as those change pretty often, especially with the meta. But that is all the core concepts, the basics that you should need to start playing the game and start doing well. I probably even forgot things. I've been planning this out for a long time. I've been wanting to do this video for months, and I finally was able to sit down, script it out. It's taken me a long time, so I do really hope you enjoyed it. Let me know if this helped you out. If you have other questions, I'm literally always around. Hit me up on Discord, hit me up on here in the comments, wherever, on Twitter, it doesn't matter. I'm always down to help. I really, really love this game. It's a lot of fun. I have a lot of fun when I play it. But if you have questions, if you're getting into the game, let me know. Always hit me up. It's probably the most requested video that I get asked for is a how-to guide on Teamfight Tactics, so let me know if this helped you. I hope it did. Share it with your friends, put it all over the internet, all that good stuff. It'd mean a lot. That's all I got for you. I really, really appreciate every one of you who took the time to watch this. I love you very, very much. You're amazing. And until next time, you stay saucy. Thank you so much for watching my video. I really do appreciate it. If you haven't done so already, make sure you subscribe, hit the little bell notification, and help me destroy the YouTube algorithm overlords by leaving a comment and liking this video. I appreciate you very much. You're amazing, and until next time, you stay saucy.